Hello friends, as part of my video lecture series, today I would like to give you an overview of Indian Penal Code 1860. The Indian Penal Code 1860 is the important penal legislations in India which defines various offences and it specifies the relevant punishments for those offences. In this video lecture, I will give you an overview or the totalitarian view of Indian Penal Code 1860. By this video, you can easily understand the chapterization, the relationship between one chapter and another chapter, etc. using the charts and tables. Coming to the basic understanding related to Indian Penal Code, crime and its elements. In order to understand various offences, the chapterization of Indian Penal Code, the punishments, etc., we need to understand what is crime and what are the elements of crime. Without understanding the concept of crime and its elements, it is not useful for us to discuss the rest of the provisions in Indian Penal Code. Coming to the word crime, crime is an act punishable by law as forbidden by statute. A crime is a commission or omission which is baneful to the society. According to Blackstone, a crime is an act done in violation of public law. There are number of definitions given by number of jurisprudence, but no definition for the term crime is universally accepted. But without doubt, the elements of crime are universally accepted. There are four elements in every crime. They are the person, mens rea, actus reus, and intended result. There must be a person, there must be a human being, there must be some guilty intention or mens rea, there should be some act or actus reus in the form of commission or omission, there must be some intended result. These four constitute the elements of crime. These four constitute the elements of crime. Motive is not an essential for crime. We should remember this. Motive is not an essential for a crime, but the person, mens rea, act and result, these four are the elements of crime. Coming to the exceptions for the elements of crime. Just we knew that the person, mens rea, actus reus and result, person, mens rea, act and result should be present in order to constitute a crime. Some offences have not at all these four essentials. It is explained in connection with the concept of criminal liability. Taking the responsibility for a particular crime is simply known as the criminal liability. Who is liable for such commission or omission of the offense? It is more important. Here, the concept of criminal liability is divided into vicarious liability, joint liability, strict liability, constructive liability, and inchoate liability. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are five kinds of criminal liability. We need to relate these 5 kinds of criminal liability with regard to the 4 elements of crime: person, mens rea, act and result. Let us discuss the first one, vicarious liability. If a person is liable for criminal acts of other person, it is said to be the vicarious liability. Here, Mr. A is liable for the acts of Mr. B. Mr. B is the other person because of his commissions or omissions. Mr. A is liable. Hence, A is liable for criminal acts of B. It is said to be vicarious liability. Here, P denotes person, plus M denotes mens rea, plus A denotes actus reus or act, commission or omission, and R denotes result, intended result. These four are the essential elements that constitute a crime. These four are the elements of crime. But just now I said there are certain exceptions. There are certain exceptions for certain crimes. Here, under vicarious liability, one person is liable for criminal acts of another or other. There is the mens rea. There is some actus reus. There is some intended result. But there is no person. The person is absent. The person is absent. But the other person with mens rea, he committed certain act that results something. Here there is mens rea, there is some act, there is some result, but there is no person. Here such person is liable for criminal acts of the other person. It is mentioned under section 154, 155 and 156 of Indian Penal Code. Here one person is liable for the acts of other person. It is said to be vicarious liability. There is some mens rea, there is some actus reus, there is some result, but there is no person. Person is the first essential element for a crime, but there is no person. It is an exception for vicarious liability. According to section 154, owner or occupier of a land on which an unlawful assembly is held is liable. According to section 155, liability of person for whose benefit a right is committed. Here, for the benefit of someone, the other person committed certain crime. Because of the acts of other person, the person is liable, the first person is liable, hence it is known as vicarious liability as under section 155 of IPC. Next, according to section 156, liability of agent or owner of occupier for whose benefit right is committed. Just only in these three sections, 154, 155 and 156 of IPC, the concept of vicarious liability is explained. The person is liable for criminal acts of other person. The next kind of criminal liability is joint liability. Here, a person is liable for criminal acts with other persons jointly. A person is liable for criminal acts with other person or other persons jointly. Other person or other person jointly. It is known as joint liability. The name itself implies that one person along with the other persons is jointly liable for certain acts. As we knew, the crime constitutes four essential elements, namely a person plus mens rea plus actus reus plus intended result. But along with a person, there is one more person, P2. There is one person P1, person 1. Along with that person, there is one more person P2, person 2 or person 3 and so on. Plus there is some mens rea, there is some actus reus and there is some result. A person is liable for the acts committed with other persons jointly. It is known as joint liability. Let us know the key provisions pertaining to the joint liability in Indian Penal Code. Section 34, Section 120B, Section 149, Section 395 and Section 402 explain the concept of joint liability. Here, according to Section 34, the acts done by several persons in furtherance of common intention is the concept. It explains about the joint liability. With a common intention, several persons do certain act, it becomes a crime. They should have the common intention. In order to prove the common intention, there must be at least more than one party. There must be at least two or more than two parties. According to Section 120B, criminal conspiracy. In order to constitute criminal conspiracy, there should be at least more than one person. There should be at least two or more than two persons. Here, one person cannot make a criminal conspiracy. One plus some other persons can make the criminal conspiracy. Here, Section 149, which deals with common object. Every member of unlawful assembly guilty of offence committed in prosecution of common object. The common intention under Section 34, common object under Section 149, criminal conspiracy under 120B and Section 195 for dacoity. There must be at least 5 or more members in order to constitute the offence of dacoity. One person cannot do the dacoity. There must be at least 5 or more than 5. Hence, P1 plus P2 plus P3 plus P4 plus P5, at least P5 plus some mens rea plus some actus reus plus some result gives an offence. This concept is known as joint liability. The next one, Section 402, that is assembling for the purpose of committing dacoity. Assembly of the persons of the 5 or more than 5 members in order to commit the dacoity. It is not committing the dacoity, assembling for the purpose of dacoity, just for preparation of the dacoity. Under Section 402, under Section 402, it is punishable. Every person in such assembly for the purpose of committing dacoity are jointly liable. The next concept is strict liability. As we know, there must be a person, there must be some mens rea or ill intention or guilty intention, there must be some act or actus reus, that is a commission or omission, there must be some intended result to constitute a crime. But here in strict liability, there is a person, there is some act, there is some result, but there is no mens rea. It is the third exception. In order to constitute a crime, these 4 elements should be present. But there are certain exceptions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These vicarious liability, joint liability, strict liability, constructive liability and inchoate liability explain the exceptions for this principle. Here, there must be, here there is one person, there is some act, there is some intended result, but such person has no guilty intention, there is no mens rea in his mind. However, he he should take the liability for such offense. A person is liable for criminal acts of even though there is no mens rea. It is an exception. Let us see the key provisions which explain the concept of strict liability in Indian Penal Code. Section 494 explains about bigamy. If a person marries, if a spouse marries the other person during the lifetime of the other spouse, it is said to be the bigamy. If a wife marries a person, he is a stranger. If a wife marries a stranger during the lifetime of her husband, it is said to be a bigamy. If a husband marries some woman during the lifetime of his wife, is said to be a bigamy. But there are certain exceptions for this concept of under the bigamy. There is one person, there is some result, that is bigamy. There is some act, he committed some act, the result is the marriage, the bigamy, the second marriage. But because of the ignorance of the law, because of the ignorance of the fact, if he commits this offense, that is bigamy, he should take the strict liability. He is punishable under section 494 of Indian Penal Code. There is no exception for him. Here he committed bigamy. The court do not consider whether he has the ill intention or not. It is not considered by the court. The court never considers the guilty intention of the person with regard to section 494. He is strictly liable for the act committed by him, even there is no mens rea in his part. According to section 268, if a person commits public nuisance, he has no mens rea. Mr. A is constructing a house in a town. There is some road very nearer to this newly constructed house, Here he kept all the sand, bricks, etc. here in this road. He has no intention, he don't want to create any inconvenience to the public. However, he is liable under section 268 on the charge of public nuisance. He has no intention. He want to construct a house. He don't want to create any nuisance to the public. However, the public are suffering with the acts of the person, even though he has no mens rea. If a person listens to music with high volume, his intention is not to create any inconvenience to his neighbors. But there is a person, there is some act, there is some result, but he doesn't have the mens rea. However, it is punishable. He is punishable under strict liability on the charge of public nuisance. Next, section 363, punishment for kidnapping. Whenever a person taking away a minor or insane person without the consent of the lawful guardian, it is simply said to be the kidnapping. I am not talking about the technical meaning of the kidnapping. However, I come very nearer to the technical meaning of the word kidnapping. Simply, if a person taking away a minor or insane person from the lawful custody or lawful guardianship of lawful guardianship of a particular person, it is said to be a kidnapping. But he has no intention, Mr. A has no ill intention. He taking away Mr. X, who is a minor, without the consent of the father of the minor, who is the natural guardian, without the consent of Mr. F, the father of X, Mr. A taking away Mr. X. There is some person, there is Mr. A, he committed an act, he is taking away. The result is, it is perceived as kidnapping, but he has no mens rea, he has no ill intention. He taking away Mr. X, a minor, in order to show the playing ground, in order to show the cricket match. He taking away Mr. X to a picnic without giving any information to natural guardian, Mr. F, the father of X. Here he has no ill intention, but there is a person, there is some act, there is some intended result. The mens rea is absent. However, he should take the strict liability on the charge of kidnapping. Next, abduction. If a person takes away some other person without the mens rea, is also treated as he must take the strict liability on the charge of abduction. Here, chapter 10 of Indian Penal Code deals with contempt of lawful authority of public servants, contempt of court. If a person disobeys the orders of the court without any ill intention, without guilty intention, he is liable strictly under the charge of contempt of court. There is some person, there is some act, there is some intended result, but he has no mens rea. He don't know about the orders passed by the court. However, the court strictly fixes the liability on him. Hence it is known as strict liability. The mens rea is absent, but the person, act and result are present. It is an exception for the basic elements of crime. Next, under section 376, committing rape of a girl below the age of 16 years, below the age of 16 years with her consent. According to section 376, which explains about the punishment for rape, if a person having sexual intercourse with a woman with her consent, with her willingness, is not amount to rape. According to section 375, if she is not under intoxicated stage, if she is not under drunken stage or drunken condition, if she is not under hypnotized condition, if she is not under the threat from such man, but committing the sexual intercourse by a person with a girl whose age is below 16 years amount to rape. The girl, Miss B is a girl, Mr. X is a man. Mr. X has sexual intercourse with Miss B, whose age is below the age of 16 years, with her consent, with her willingness. She is not under the intoxicated stage, she is not under the drunken condition, she is not under the hypnotized condition, but she gave free consent to Mr. X. Mr. X has no mens rea. He feels that the girl has given the consent in order to have a sexual intercourse. There is some person, there is some act, there is some result, but there is no mens rea. He has no ill intention. He feels that she freely gave the consent to him. However, he is strictly liable under section 376. Next, the constructive liability, the concept of constructive liability. No act by the person, but he does the criminal act through other person. As we knew, there must be some person, there must be some mens rea, there must be some act, there must be some intended result. Here, in order to constitute the constructive liability, there is no act. There is some person. He has mens rea. There is some result, but this person is not doing any act. He is not committing any act. He is not omitting any act. Even though he is liable under the constructive liability. Here, he does such act through the other person. He is physically absent, but he is mentally present at that place, at the place of commission of such offense. He may physically absent, but he is mentally present. His mental presence is considered by the law, the IPC, in order to constitute the constructive liability. In tort, there is no difference in between the strict liability and constructive liability, but in Indian Penal Code, the strict liability and constructive liability are easily distinguished. Section 34, which speaks about common intention. If Mr. A and Mr. B with common intention want to plan to kill Mr. C, Mr. B shoots Mr. C with a gun. Mr. A, at the time of shooting Mr. C, he was in his home. Mr. B is physically present at the time of killing Mr. C. At the time of shooting Mr. C, Mr. A is not physically present at the time when Mr. B shooting Mr. C. But the court considers that Mr. A is mentally present at the time of B shooting Mr. C. His mental presence is fixed by the court. The court fixes certain liability on Mr. A because of his mental presence. Both have the common intention in order to kill someone. Section 109, which speaks about punishment of abatement of all abatements in IPC and all abatements. 109, punishment for abatement and all other abatements in IPC comes under the concept of constructive liability. A person abates some other person in order to kill the third person. The first person who abates the second person to kill the third person is not physically present at the time of committing such offense, but his mental presence is considered by the court. He should take the liability for his mental presence. It is the concept of constructive liability. Section 149, every member of unlawful assembly guilty of offense committed in prosecution of common object is also comes under the constructive liability. Next, section 396 and 460 are also deal with the concept of constructive liability. Just refer these two sections, the section 396 and section 460. Next, the concept of inchoate liability or incomplete liability. Inchoate means incomplete. Here there is some just in the previous concept, that is constructive liability. In constructive liability, there is some person, there is mens rea, there is some result, but there is no act done by such person. But in inchoate liability, there is some person, there is some mens rea, no act, there is no act, or there is no result, Section 399, which speaks about making preparation for committing a dacoity. There is a person, he has mens rea, but there is no result, there is no act, there is no result. But he is preparing in order to do certain act that ultimately results something. Section 399, making preparation for committing dacoity. Here the dacoity is not committed, but they are making certain preparations for dacoity. There are some persons, there is some mens rea in their mind, there is guilt, there is some guilty intention in their mind, but they are not committing any act, there is no result, even though they are liable under inchoate liability on the charge of making preparation to commit dacoity. Next, section 400 speaks about punishment for belonging to a gang of dacoity. Section 401, punishment for belonging to gang of thieves. Section 402, for assembling for the purpose of committing dacoity. There is no intended act, there is no act, there is no result. However, they are liable under inchoate liability. Section 511 of Indian Penal Code speaks about the punishment for attempts. Here they are they attempted something, but there is no result. It is incomplete crime. They should take inchoate liability. They should take the inchoate liability. If the punishment is not specified for any offense in IPC, then the maximum punishment for such offense should be divided with 2 according to section 511 in case of attempt of such offenses. Half of the punishment will be fixed on the offenders who attempted a particular offense. If for instance, the punishment for theft is 3 years. The maximum punishment for theft is 3 years. But if a person attempts to commit theft, then half of the punishment will be fixed on such person on account of attempt to theft. Then the half, 3 by 2, half means 3 by 2. 1.5 years is the maximum punishment in case of attempt to theft. It is also section 511 of Indian Penal Code also speaks about the inchoate liability. Here a person mens rea some act, but there is no result, also constitute the inchoate liability. All attempts, all abatements, criminal conspiracy, all are the part and parcel of the inchoate liability. Friends, the next one, stages of crime. This is also one of the fundamental concepts related to IPC. Without understanding the concept of elements of crime and criminal liability and stages of crime, we can't understand the totalitarian view of Indian Penal Code. If time permits, I will explain I will prepare the chapter-wise video lectures. Here, coming to the stages of crime, commission of crime involves 4 stages. Stage 1 is some intention, stage 2 is preparation, stage 3 is attempt, and stage 4 is accomplishment. Offences in which intention is punishable. In order to constitute an offence, these 4 stages should be completed. But there are some exceptions. In IPC, mere intention is also punishable under abatements, criminal conspiracy, section 122, 121 to 123, which speaks about waging war against the government, section 124, which speaks about the sedition, section 402, which speaks about mere assembly of persons for committing dacoity without further preparation. Here, the mere intention in the minds of the persons is punishable under Indian Penal Code, but it is too difficult for the prosecution in order to prove the intention, the guilty intention of the persons. It is very difficult. However, under these charges, under these sections, the intention is punishable under Indian Penal Code. The second stage is preparation. Offences in which preparation is punishable are enumerated here. Section 122, 126, 399, section 276, section 233 to 235 and 257, section 242 to 242, 243, 259, 266 and 474. Here the preparation itself is punishable. There is no need to accomplishment. The third stage is not required. Within the third stage, a person is punishable. Collecting arms, etc., with an intention of waging war against the government. Collection of the arms is some preparation to wage war against the government, to waging war against the government. According to section 126, committing depredation on territories of power at peace with the government of India is an offence. Making preparation to commit the dacoity is an offence. Here, sale of drug as a different drug, or preparation to make a different drug, a duplicate drug, preparation to make a duplicate drug is punishable under section 276. Preparation is itself punishable under IPC. Section 233, 235, 257 speaks about preparation for counterfeiting coins and government stamps. The preparation for making counterfeiting coins and government stamps is punishable. Mere preparation is punishable under section 233, 235 and 257. Possession of counterfeit coins, false weight and measurements and forged documents is punishable under section 242, 243, 259, 266 and 474 of IPC. Next, the third stage is attempt. The mere attempt is also punishable under IPC. Section 307, 308, 309, 326B, 393, 398 and 511 speaks about the attempts which are punishable under IPC. Attempt to murder under 307, attempt to commit culpable homicide under 308, attempt to commit suicide under 309, attempt to acid attack under newly added provision, that is 326B, attempt to commit robbery under 393 attempt to commit robbery or dacoity when armed with deadly weapons. Under 398, here these are the attempts. There is no accomplishment, there is no intended result, there is no accomplishment. However, with mere attempt they are punishable. Section 511 speaks about the punishment for such attempts. Next, accomplishment: all the offences except those specified under list 1, list 2 and list 3. List 1, the offences which are punishable even with intention, the offences punishable even with preparation, the offences which are punishable even with the attempt are listed above. The rest of all the offences under IPC are also punishable under the head of offences in which accomplishment is punishable. Next, I would like to give you the totalitarian picture of Indian Penal Code using this slide. It's the most crucial slide with regard to my entire presentation, my entire lecture on the overview of Indian Penal Code 1860. The Indian Penal Code 1860 was enacted in 1860, but it came into force from 1862. It came into force from 1862. There are total 23 chapters. There are 23 chapters and 511 sections. 23 chapters and 511 sections. Chapter 1, 2, 3 are dealing with the introductory provisions. Chapter 1, which comprises of section 1 to 5, deals with the introductory provisions of IPC, short name, extent or applicability, jurisdiction, etc. Section 6 to 52A speaks about the general explanations. Section 3 speaks about punishments from section 52 to 75. These are the introductory provisions of IPC. Coming to chapter 4, the chapter 4 deals with the general exceptions. The general exceptions from section 76 to 106. If time permits, I would like to prepare a video lecture only on this chapter, that is chapter 4. Next, chapter 5 to 23 are purely relating to the penal provisions of offences from section 107 to 511. Section 107 is the starting provision with related to the specific offences in Indian Penal Code. Here, for better understanding, I am categorizing these penal provisions of offences into two heads. One is incomplete offences or inchoate offences and complete offences. The inchoate offences are specified under chapter 5, which deals with abatement, chapter 5A, which deals with criminal conspiracy, and chapter 23, which deals with all attempts. Section 122, which speaks about preparation for waging war. 126 is also deals with such offences, and section 399 speaks about preparation for dacoity, and section 511 speaks about various punishments for various offences in case of attempts. Here, these provisions are purely related to inchoate offences, incomplete offences. This is not categorized in IPC. For better understanding, I have categorized these provisions into these two heads. The penal provisions into these two heads. Next, the complete offences, which are specified under section 6 to 22, from section 121 to 510, even 511 also, except these. Next, the complete offences are categorized into two important categories, namely offences against the state, government, public, etc. The offences against the private persons, offences against the state, government, public, etc. and offences against the private persons. The offences against the state, government and public, etc. are listed from chapter 6 to 15, from section 121 to section 298. From chapter 6 to 15, from section 121 to 298, the offences against state or government or public, etc. are enumerated, they are listed. Here section 6 speaks about offences against the state, waging war, sedition, etc. Chapter 7 deals with offences relating to army, navy, air force, etc. Chapter 8 deals with offences against public tranquility. Section 9 deals with offences by or related to public servants. Section 9A related to elections. Section 10 deals with contempt of lawful authority of public servants, that is contempt of court. Section 11 deals with false evidence and offences against public justice. Section 12 speaks about offences relating to coin and government stamps. Chapter 13 deals with offences relating to weights and measures. Chapter 14 deals with offences related to public health, safety, convenience, decency and morals. Chapter 15 deals with offences related to religion. Here we need to remember one thing. From chapter 6 to chapter 15, the seriousness of offences has been decreasing. This has been decreasing. Offences against state, the offences against the state are more severe when compared to the offences specified under chapter 15. However, majority of the offences from chapter 6 to chapter 15, which are offences against state, public or government, are non-compoundable in nature. Here chapter 16 to 22 speaks about offences against private persons, not against state, government or public, etc. From section 299 to section 511 speaks about the offences related to private persons. Chapter 16 deals with offences affecting the human body. It includes murder, culpable homicide, hurt, grievous hurt, kidnapping, abduction, the sexual offences, etc. Chapter 17 deals with offences against property. It comprises of theft, dacoity, robbery, criminal trespass, house breaking, lurking house trespass, mischief, criminal misappropriation, criminal breach of trust, cheating, etc. Chapter 18 deals with offences relating to documents and property. We need to remember one thing. Under chapter 18, the offences relating to documents and property, a few provisions related to state, government or public are also included. Here in chapter 12, where offences relating to coins and government stamps, preparing counterfeit coins and government stamps is punishable under chapter 12, but preparing the currency notes, counterfeit Currency notes is offense under chapter 18. Chapter 18, these are interrelated. If the offense is related to making the counterfeit currency is in chapter 12, it is more justifiable. I think just this is my opinion. Next, criminal breach of contracts, criminal breach of contracts of services under section 19. Next, offenses related to offenses relating to marriage under section 20. Offenses cruelty by husband or relatives of husband under section chapter 20a with section 498a. Chapter 21 with regard to defamation. Chapter 22 deals with the criminal intimidation. Criminal intimidation, insult and annoyance. Chapter 23, which deals with attempts to commit offenses. Here the offenses affecting the human body and offenses against the property are the most important provisions in IPC. Majority of the cases with relation to IPC are relating to chapter 16, which deals with offenses affecting the human body, and chapter 17, which deals with offenses against the property. But we need to understand one thing, that is the general exceptions which are specified under chapter 4 are available only to chapter 16, those which are offenses affecting the human body, and those which are the offenses affecting the property. Only in case of offenses affecting the human body and offenses against the property we can use the general exceptions. For rest of all these provisions, the general exceptions are not available. One should not use the general exceptions for these chapters except chapter 16 and chapter 17. Next, I have compiled this table which speaks about the age of the criminals or deceased persons or victims for different offences under IPC 1860. Just for understanding, I have compiled all these. According to section 82, act of child under the age of 7 years of age is the description about this section. Here the age is mentioned less than 7 years. If any offence committed by a child below the age of 7 years is not at all treated as an offence. There is no offence if such offence is committed by a child whose age is below 7 years. Here I used the term O. O denotes the offender or criminal. If the child's age is below 7 years, he commits certain offences that is not treated as an offence according to section 82. Section 82 speaks about less than 7 years. Section 83 speaks about more than 7 years and less than 2 years of offender. Act of child above 7 years under 12 of immature understanding. Section 87 speaks about the age of the deceased whose age is above 18 years. Act not intended or not known to be likely to cause death or grievous hurt by consent. Under general exceptions, it is listed. Consent is one of the exception. The consent given by the person whose age is above 8 years is an exception under 87. Under 89, act done in good faith for benefit of child by consent of guardian is an offence, but the age with regard to the deceased is less than 12 years. Next, sale etc. of obscene objects to young persons speaks about less than 20 years of age. If a person sells obscene books to a person whose age is below 20 years, is punishable under this section, this provision, section 293. Next, abatement of suicide of child or innocent person whose age is below 18 years is punishable under 305. Next, exposure and abandonment of child under 12 years by parent or person having care of it speaks about below 12 years of age under section 317. Kidnapping from lawful guardianship speaks about below 16 years in case of male and below 18 years in case of female under section 361. Next, procreation of minor girl is an offence under section 366A in case the age of the female is below 18 years. Importation of girl from foreign country is punishable if the age of the woman or girl is below 21 years under section 366B. Kidnapping or abducting a child under 10 years with intent to steal from its person and if the age of the child is under 7 years, it is punishable under 369. Next, committing sexual intercourse with the wife by a man if his wife's age is below 15 years is offence under 375. If the rape is committed by a person with a woman whose age is below 18 years with her consent is also constitute the rape. If the sexual intercourse is if there is a sexual intercourse with a man with a woman whose age is 18 years with her consent and with her willingness is not amount to the rape. Here these provisions speaks about the age of offenders, victim, deceased. Coming to the next table which deals with the number of criminals for different offences under IPC. In this chapter I compiled the number of criminals for different offences under IPC using these three columns: section, name of the offence and number of criminals. According to section 34, there must be at least two parties in order to constitute common intention. According to section 120B, there must be at least two or more members in order to constitute the criminal conspiracy. In order to constitute unlawful assembly, there must be at least 5 persons. According to section 141, in order to constitute common object, there must be at least 5 persons. Under section 149, in order to constitute abetting commission of offence by public by 10%. 10% is the minimum number of criminals under section 117, that is abetting the commission of certain offence by the public, abetting the public in order to do certain offence require 10 members as public. Then at least 5 criminals are required in order to commit the dacoity under section 391. The next chart is related to number of exceptions available for different offences under Indian Penal Code 1860. Here this table is also comprises of 3 columns: section, offence and number of exceptions. Here section 136 harboring deserter, 300 murder, 339 wrongful restraint, 375 rape, 494 marrying again during the lifetime of husband or wife, bigamy, 499 defamation, 505 statements conducting to public mischief have certain exceptions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These 7 sections have certain exceptions in case of certain offences. Harboring deserter. Harboring deserter, if a runaway armed man, navy man or air force man is harboring in a particular place, the person who gives such harboring is punishable. But there is an exception. If the wife gives the harboring to her husband, it is not an offence under section 136. Next, murder. Section 300 speaks about murder. There are 5 exceptions in murder. A culpable homicide amounts to murder without these exceptions. A culpable homicide without these exceptions amount to culpable homicides amount to murder, or simply murder. A culpable homicide without these offences amounts to murder. A culpable homicide without grave and sudden provocation. A culpable homicide without grave and sudden provocation is an offence of murder. A culpable homicide where the right of private defense is exceeding is murder. A culpable homicide when the act done by the public authority is murder. Sorry, these are the exceptions. Without these, it becomes murder. Without these, the culpable homicide becomes murder. Culpable homicide without these exceptions become murder. Grave and sudden provocation. Culpable homicide with a grave and sudden provocation is not a murder. A culpable homicide exceeding the right of private defense is not a murder. Act done by the public authority. A culpable homicide in which the act is done by public authority is not a murder. A culpable homicide where there is a fight between the parties, there is no murder. The culpable homicide where there is a consent from the deceased person, that is not amounts to murder. These are the 5 exceptions under 300. Next, the next one is wrongful restraint. 339 speaks about wrongful restraint. Whenever a person obstructs the other person in order to move a particular direction, it is simply said to be the wrongful restraint. Obstruction of a private way over the land or water with exclusive legal right not amounts to wrongful restraint under section 339. It is only exception. It is only one exception available under 339. Next, under 375, there are 2 exceptions available as per the new amendment of 2013, the Criminal Amendment Act 2013, as per Nirbhaya Act, there are 2 exceptions under rape. If a man has sexual intercourse with a woman, if he penetrates his penis, if he penetrates any object, if he penetrates any bodily part at any extent without her consent, against her will, here such penetration of penis or any object or any bodily part into the vagina, urethra, anus or mouth is said to be the rape if it is committed, if such penetration is committed without the consent or against her will, with her consent, under intoxicated condition, with her consent, under drunken condition, with her consent, under hypnotized condition, with her consent, under threat, it is not amount to rape. If the penetration of any object as a process of medical procedure, it is not treated as a rape under section 375. The sexual intercourse by a man with his own wife, if the age of his wife is above 15 years, not amount to rape under section 375. These are the two exceptions. Next, marrying again during the lifetime of husband or wife, that is bigamy, is an offense, but there is an exception. If the marriage is declared void by the court, if the marriage is declared as void, then the husband or wife can again marry some other person. It is the only exception. But it is very clear that along with this, a Muslim man, a male Muslim, can marry more than one wife. It is also one of the exceptions available under section 434. Marrying again during the lifetime of a Muslim wife by her husband is not an offense. It is also an exception. It is also an exception. 1 plus 1. Here, if the marriage is declared void, then he can marry other person. Either the husband or wife can marry other person if the existing marriage is declared void by the court. The one more exception under section 494 is a male Muslim can marry another female. It is also an exception available only for Muslim male. Next, the exception under 499 for defamation. There are 10 exceptions available under defamation. It is not possible to explain all these within this video lecture. If time permits me, I will make a separate video on defamation. Next, the statements conducting to public mischief has one exception under section 505. If the rumors conducting to public mischief, if such rumors or report is true, then it is not an offense under section 505. These are the number of exceptions for different offenses under various sections under IPC 1860. The next topic under the totalitarian view of Indian Penal Code deals with the number of punishments for different offenses under IPC 1860. According to section 53 of Indian Penal Code 1860, the offenders are liable for 5 kinds of punishments. The 5 kinds of punishments are death punishment or capital punishment, imprisonment for life, imprisonment that is rigorous imprisonment, and simple imprisonment, forfeiture of property, and fine. There are five punishments specified under section 53 of Indian Penal Code for the offenders who are committing various offenses under IPC. Here the death punishment is confirmed by the court in certain offenses. In next slide I will show you the complete table pertaining to when the death punishment is confirmed by the court, when the death punishment is imposed by the court, and imprisonment for life is imposed by the court in many offenses. It is not possible to show all the sections in this slide. Imprisonment, rigorous imprisonment and simple imprisonment is also imposed by the court in several offences under section 126 and 127, 169. The court may forfeiture the property. It takes away the entire property of the offender. Then the fine, the court may impose the fine. The court may takes the money, only the money from the offender. For instance, section 510 speaks about the least fine specified under IPC is specified under section 510. The least punishment for an offence under IPC is specified under section 511. If a drunken person misbehaves with the public, it becomes an offence under section 510. The punishment for 510, this offence is just 10 rupees fine or 24 hours of imprisonment. 10 rupees fine or 24 rupees of 24 hours of imprisonment. The least punishment is imposed for section 510. Next, the offences in which sentence of death is given or imposed by the court as per Indian Penal Code 1860. I compiled about 11 sections when the court imposes the death penalty on offenders under IPC 1860. According to section 121, which speaks about waging or attempting to war, waging war against the government, etc. Under this offence, the court can impose the death penalty. Abatement of mutiny, if mutiny is committed in consequence thereof, then it is punishable with the death penalty by the court. That is armed rebellion. Armed rebellion is an offence which can be punishable with death penalty according to section 132. Giving or fabricating false evidence with intent to procure conviction of capital offence of some other person is offence under it is punishable with death. As per section 194, punishment for murder is punishable with death, with capital punishment according to section 302. The fifth one is punishment for murder by life convict under 303 is punishable with death. Abatement of suicide of child or insane person is an offence under 305, is also punishable with sentence of death. Next, attempt to murder by life convict is also imposed with sentence of death by the court according to section 307. Kidnapping for ransom, etc. is also punishable with sentence of death according to section 364A. Dacoity with murder is punishable with death sentence according to section 396. Next, punishment for causing death or resulting persistent vegetative state of victim of rape is punishable with death according to section 376A. Punishment for repeat offenders of the rape is also punishable with death according to section 376E of the Act 1860. Next, I would like to prepare a separate video lecture on general exceptions, incomplete offences, offences related to human body, offences against the property, defamation, if time permits. I am in this process. I am preparing certain presentations in order to make the video lectures on these important provisions of Indian Penal Code. Thank you friends for watching this video. For queries, feel free to contact subhanbande@gmail.com. Please subscribe to my video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos on latest law topics. Thank you and goodbye.